NFL Week 12 is upon us. Nick Whalen, John McKechnie here to talk through our Circa Million contest picks for a loaded Week 12, John. We are done with this bye week nonsense. All teams in action, all 32 playing this weekend. Very much looking forward to breaking this down with you, man. Appreciate you stopping by and looking forward to talking about every game on the slate on the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod later today. You can find that on YouTube. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. I know you're hanging out in Maryland for the holidays. How's everything going?
I think it's always great to be back in the Crab State. We can bet on sports legally here, which is beautiful. We're stringing some things together for Thursday's slate. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, as our viewers on YouTube can see, it's not the usual background for me. As a true podcaster, I'm coming to you live from my mom's house.
We wouldn't have it any other way, John. That's actually my preferred background for you. I think it really encompasses what we're about here as we break down our week in the Circa Million contest. We've been running relatively hot of late. Wouldn't say we're necessarily contending for the overall title here, but we're 4 games above 500 now on the season. Had some rough weeks there early on. I think it was week 7 in particular that really threw us for a loop. But we went 3-2 last week. We won on the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the LA Rams. That was a John McKechnie special, talking me into the Rams. I appreciate that one. We lost on the Detroit Lions, which was our favorite bet of the week. And I still just don't really understand how Jared Goff imploded the way he did. And look, if the Bears offensive lineman doesn't inadvertently kick that ball through the end zone at the end, Aiden Hutchinson's falling on that for a touchdown, and we're getting the cover of the year. But nonetheless, we lose on Detroit. And I'm embarrassed to even admit this, that we bet the Commanders. My goodness. That was never close.
Shame on us for that. Shame on them still for letting Tommy DeVito not just beat them, but like be a pretty big reason why they won. So that's on Washington to be clear. That makes things tricky for Thursday, of course, because the Cowboys famously bad against the spread over the last decade or so. But now you got the Commanders, and it's that makes it very tricky. Yeah. But either way, shame on you, Washington, for last weekend at least.
Yeah, well, let's start there with the Thanksgiving slate, John, and we'll decide if we want to use any of these games. Like you said, Dallas has struggled in these Thanksgiving matchups. Really going back over a decade at this point. Since 2011, the Cowboys are 1-11 ATS on Thanksgiving Day. Dak Prescott 1-5 against the number, and we're getting the Dallas Cowboys as 12-point favorites. The numbers have already locked for the Circa contest this week. This is 3 weeks in a row now that Dallas is a double-digit favorite. They've covered the first 2, no problem. They went on the road at Carolina. Actually saw a lot of people were on Carolina last week, and I understand the logic there. There are a lot of trends that point you toward a team going on the road as a double-digit favorite 2 weeks in a row with a short week coming up. But Dallas took care of business there, and this is one of those spots where I would love to use the Cowboys. 12 is a little bit steep for my liking. I think I'd rather use San Francisco, even with the number sitting right at 7. But do we trust the Cowboys to cover a big number for 3 weeks in a row?
Well, it's interesting to me that it keeps climbing, right? This was 9 going into last weekend. It was 11, and now it's up to 12, locked at 12 here at Circa. It's 12.5 at some other shops. That still allows the 13-point wins in play. I know that the trends all scream that Dallas is awful on Thanksgiving against the number, but Dallas, this particular Dallas team, they tend to put a thumping on those bad teams, right? So their margin of victory tends to be such that this 12 points isn't a huge obstacle. If this was 13.5 up to 14, then it's a different discussion. But I think 12 is somewhat friendly. And I think it's important to note the amount of movement that we've seen on this line in recent days. So whether or not we include it on our card, we'll see. But I actually, even with the bad trends in mind, I still think Dallas actually gets this done.
I lean that way as well. It's really hard to build an argument in favor of Washington right now, other than just saying, weird things happen when these teams match up, or weird things happen on Thanksgiving Day for the Cowboys. It's like, what do you possibly say positively about the Commanders? I mean, I guess they're if they really love Ron Rivera, they might be playing for his job. this week. I mean, they have been a high variance team, right? Like we saw them hang around with the Eagles twice. Like for as bad as they look at their lowest point when they're turning the ball over 6 times against the New York Giants, like it could be a very frisky team. And when Sam Howell's rolling, they can kind of hang in with just about everyone, even if they're not actually winning the game. But they're certainly capable of keeping this within a score. But yeah, man, it's tough to find a reason not to back Dallas here. I mean, you look at their 4 home wins this season, and granted, those have come against the Jets, the Pats, the Rams, and the Giants. They've won those games by a combined 160-50.
Whoa, that's loud.
That's 22.5 points a game, man. I mean, when they're playing an average to below average team at home, they do nothing but beat them. So I lean Dallas in this spot. Well, we'll have to discuss if we actually want to use them. But with the number sitting at 12, it's something to consider. Lions Packers, that one locked at 7.5, John, in favor of the Detroit Lions. Do we dare go back to the well?
I'm less sure on that one. I don't think that we see Jared Goff turn it over 3 times again. That was his first multi-interception game of the season this past weekend. But the Packers, if you squint hard enough, they have been playing a little bit better over these last 2 weeks. The close loss in Pittsburgh and then beating the Chargers this past weekend. Really banged up backfield. So really this is all on Jordan Love's shoulders, right? Because no Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon was on the injury report this week. I got a notification that my waiver wire scoop, Emmanuel Wilson, was also put on injured reserve this afternoon. So it's great. Awesome. Thank you. So it's going to be all on Jordan Love here. And that feels icky if you're back in the Packers here, but the 7.5 number is enough to make me stay away from this one. I can't really get to a side on this.
Yeah, and it's not only the running backs for Green Bay. I mean, Jaden Reed is banged up. He came out with a chest injury after that Chargers game last week. Dontavian Wicks, who's actually made some plays, especially last week. He did not practice on Tuesday. So they will, in all likelihood, they'll be without Aaron Jones. He hasn't been officially ruled out, but he's not playing. A.J. Dillon could be out. Emmanuel Wilson, the third running back, could be out. I mean, it could be a Patrick Taylor day in DFS this weekend. Excuse me. James Robinson was also elevated. That's ex-Jag. James Robinson,
wow,
not a great sign as far as that running back depth goes. Luke Musgrave, the rookie tight end who had come on the last couple of weeks, he was in the hospital 2 days ago with a lacerated kidney. He's on IR as well. So the injuries piling up for that Packers passing game. I've been really encouraged by what I've seen from Love the last few weeks. I think the willingness and the ability to throw downfield that just was not there early in the season. It felt like anytime he was going downfield, he was forcing something. He wasn't confident. That has flipped. He looks like a much more confident thrower. But if you're taking away that many weapons, man, and with Detroit, it's like, yeah, they played a terrible game for 85% against the Chicago Bears, but I give them a lot of credit for coming back and winning that game. Like that is a game that the Detroit Lions lose like 100 out of 100 times in the past, and I think that's the mark of a good team. That when you play as poorly as they did, really on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense for 3 quarters, to still pull that game out, I think that says a lot about the progress that they made. I actually lean Detroit here. I mean, at 7.5, we don't have to play it, but I think this is a good bounce back spot because Detroit very nearly covered last week against the Bears team that to me is not all that much worse than Green Bay. And Detroit played like a D+ game for most of it, and I think the chances of them coming out that flat again are not great.
Yeah, I mean, it's home Thanksgiving. This is like their best start since the Kennedy administration. The vibes are high in Detroit, of course, and they got a chance to sweep the Packers season series for the second year in a row. I mean, that's not nothing. So I mean, I expect the Lions to win this one, but does it end up being more than a touchdown? I just can't quite get there.
All right, our last Thanksgiving Day game, Niners Seahawks. Is this the one that we like best of the 3?
Yes, the Seahawks are going to get crushed, unfortunately. If you wish that this game had the Seahawks at full strength, but with Geno dealing with the triceps contusion, that sounds uncomfortable, especially when your job is to throw the football. And then Kenneth Walker also being nicked up. So this is a Seattle team that I was already starting to question when they were at full speed, full strength, and now they're neither of those things. Oh boy. And the Niners, ever since the bye week came at a great time for them. They had lost their previous 3 games. Brock Purdy was turning the ball over a ton. Since the bye, 2 games, 2 pretty resounding victories. Brock Purdy 6 touchdowns, no interceptions in those 2 games. I think that he's going to pick the Seahawks apart. If you're a props man for Thursday night, the McCaffrey two or more touchdowns prop, you can get that at around 5-1. Very interested in that, because I think that the 49ers are just going to be able to do whatever they want to do. I think that we also have a situation where the Seahawks, they're going to have so many 3-and-outs, whether it is a 70% Geno out there or if it's Drew Lock, the defense is just going to get tired, and a defense that's not at full go against the 49ers offense, the way that it's rolling right now, that just smells like disaster to me.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that this game is in Seattle and the fact that San Francisco lost Hufanga last week, those are the two things that give me a small degree of pause here. But I think we're back to the 49ers just being a wagon, right? The team that they were through the first 6 or 7 weeks of the year before the injuries set in. And I think we allowed some doubt to creep in because of Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel and all the other injuries that they've had on both sides of the ball. But when this team is healthy, I think they've issued pretty stern reminders over the last couple of weeks that they might be the single best team in football. So yeah, with a banged up Geno Smith, I mean, I expect him to start. He was still limited at practice yesterday. It's more of a kind of a pain management type of thing when you're dealing with like a bruise, but I think there's a pretty good chance he's at less than 100%. Like you said, Kenneth Walker, that's a big loss. DK Metcalf on the injury report as well. And if the Niners do what they do and get to 31, 33, 35 points in this game, I don't see Seattle keeping up, man. Like the Seahawks can move the ball, and yet they are consistently one of the worst teams in the NFL on third down. Like they're down to 30th in the NFL in third down conversion rate.
Yeah, so you have to play a very crisp game to beat the Niners, and you need to force the Niners into mistakes. I'm not sure that the Seahawks will be able to accomplish either of those. So it feels like almost too easy to bet this one, but I really like the 49ers this week. I think they need to be on the old card this week.
Niners 10-1 against the number in their last 11 division games. And John Ewing from BetMGM tweeted a couple days ago that Thanksgiving Day favorites are covering at a 65% clip since 2005. So something to consider there. All right, John, let's each talk about one or two more games that might make the card this weekend. We can now open things up to the Black Friday game, Dolphins-Jets, any games on Sunday and Monday. I'm going to throw out Ravens-Chargers to you. And a lot of the numbers, kind of closed at undesirable spots. This one's at 3.5. I really like the Ravens here. Obviously I would like it more at like 2.5, but even at 3.5, I think this is a pretty good deal. It's a cross-country trip. I get that. But extended rest for Baltimore, having played on Thursday last week. It's not even a true road game, out in LA. You're just technically away from home. It's not the type of environment, excuse me, where fans are going to be getting on top of you. Excuse me, man. And the LA Chargers at this point, man, it's like I still have like the lingering Justin Herbert fear, because I actually think he's played two of his better games of the year these last 2 weeks, even though that they've lost those. You just kind of worry about him single-handedly winning a game. But I think we saw last week that even when he's playing really well, they just don't have enough. They do not have enough right now. Keenan Allen made some huge drops against Green Bay. Austin Eckler to me looked like Mike Tolbert, when he broke free on that long run. Like he just doesn't look like himself. He had a weird fumble near the goal line. Obviously, Quentin Johnston is just not that guy. I don't think it's happening this year. I'm not saying we have to write him off entirely, but I mean, he's in like Jalen Reagor territory at this point. And, I still think the Chargers are playing below their level, but Baltimore is just not the type of team that a struggling offense and an even more struggling defense, especially against the run. That's not who you want to face right now. So I love the Ravens -3.5.
I love the Ravens -3.5 as well. The Herbert concern is of course legitimate. He can put on the Superman cape, but I think Lamar Jackson can do the same thing. That obviously no Mark Andrews. We'll have to see how this offense adjusts moving forward, but I think that's more of a fantasy, angle than a real life valuation of this team against the number. I think that they're going to still be able to put up points on offense, and I think that they're going to be able to run the ball. Gus Edwards has been a revelation this year. Keaton Mitchell still getting himself going. I think he's a big play threat in this particular matchup. And, you look at a Chargers defense that Joey Bosa's out, I believe, for this game. So that's one half of the, truly, fearsome on paper tandem that they have as edge rushers are concerned. So Lamar Jackson with time, I think, is a really bad deal for the Chargers. So the Chargers also poorly coached on both sides of the ball. Schematically, don't make a whole lot of sense. There's no home field advantage to speak of, like you said. So that the Ravens, it's tricky when it's more than a field goal on the road and you're back in the favorite. But even still, I think the Ravens need to be on the card.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Mentioning the Bosa injury is big. Already a struggling defense, and losing him certainly does not help. Any concern with the absence of Mark Andrews, or is that something that maybe hurts the Ravens more long term than for this matchup specifically?
So I think it in the big spots, Mark Andrews has been the guy over the last 5 years. So it's going to be tough without him, but I think Odell Beckham is actually starting to kind of look like his old self a little bit. You have Zay Flowers starting to come on in his own right. I think that the Ravens, people scratched their heads at the time when they drafted 2 tight ends in the 4th round in 2022, but Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, I think, are both ready to kind of pick up the slack left behind Mark Andrews. So if they can do 75% of what Andrews was doing, I think the Ravens would take that going forward as long as the Ravens receivers can pick up the rest of that remaining slack, and I think they can.
All right, what's a game that you want to pitch me on, including in the card, John?
Okay, well, how about Patriots Giants? No, I am kidding. We are staying as far away from that game as humanly possible.
Absolutely not.
It is radioactive. What do we think about the Texans, man? I hate to dig, 2 weeks in a row, because I was super wrong about the Titans last week, obviously with how that game unfolded. But I think Houston at home in this spot, getting 2 points. Did the Jaguars do enough to convince you that they've fixed things last week?
No. Played really well. I think it was nice to see Lawrence finally get in the end zone as a runner and use that as more of a weapon. Those were his first 2 rushing touchdowns of the season. Defensively, I think they held up about as well as we think. It's still taking a while for people to realize that it's a good defense at this point, right? We're 11 weeks in, and they still rank in the top 10 in a lot of metrics, and I think we have to consider them as such. But obviously the memory of that 49ers game is still fresh in the mind, as is the memory of them losing by multiple scores to Houston back in week 3. And that game was in Jacksonville, right? I think, if this game turns into a shootout, I somehow trust CJ Stroud more than I do Trevor Lawrence, which is not something I ever thought I would say coming into the year. I think that could very well be the case. I think this could be a race to 30 type of game. And if Jacksonville is able to run the ball, then I think they could win. But they've been just terrible, in terms of the efficiency numbers on the ground. Travis Etienne's having a nice fantasy year, but that's about it. I don't think Houston's really going to be able to run on Jacksonville either. So if it's CJ Stroud in that passing game versus Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, to me, if you run that through 100 times, 1,000 times, it should be close to a wash. But I just trust Stroud more right now. I think he's been the guy that's shown up more consistently in that regard. He's been a little bit more mistake prone over the last couple of weeks as well. So that's going to be key. The Jags forced a ton of turnovers. If they can get a couple of picks on CJ Stroud, that kind of flips things for me. But I don't mind taking Houston here. The number is Jags -2 on the road. And I think this is going to be a wild crowd. I think Houston kind of senses that they have an opportunity here. And if they win this, they're lead the AFC South.
Right. With, the all-important head-to-head tiebreaker cinched up over Jacksonville. So I do like Houston in this spot. I definitely would not oppose them being on the card, but I'm glad to have gotten your perspective on that before we kind of made that decision. Any thoughts on either of the pick'ems in the Circa lines here, whether it is Cards, Rams, or Saints, Falcons?
If it wasn't the Falcons, like that specific franchise, I would actually like this spot for them. They're at home. They're catching a Saints team that should have used the bye to get healthy and really did not do that at all. Like Derek Carr is still banged up. I don't think they're going to have Marshawn Lattimore for this game. We already know for sure that they will not have Michael Thomas, who landed on IR. This should be, in theory, a good spot for the Atlanta Falcons. But there's a reason this is still a pick'em, right? And the Falcons aren't given any points here because they're the Falcons and they're completely untrustworthy. And we're back to Desmond Ridder now. I think they'll be able to, I think they'll be able to use their bye week to hopefully get some things straightened out with this offense. Hopefully, get the usage patterns where they need to be for the running back specifically. But how do we trust the Atlanta Falcons at this point, man? And the other one, Rams Cardinals. I wish we had a little more time to wait because we got to get these picks in tonight because we want to play at least one of those Thanksgiving games. I need to see what's going to happen with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They're saying there's a chance Cooper Kupp could play this weekend. We don't really know on Nacua. He came out of last week's game with a shoulder injury. if you're taking one or both of those guys away from a Rams offense that to me is just still look pretty shaky. I mean, they should have been buried earlier in that game against Seattle. I think they were really, really lucky to come away with a victory. Like Arizona does nothing but just hang around in these games. They should have beat Houston last week, right? Now we're talking about Houston leading their division. I think this one is a stay away for me ultimately, unless we get news on Kupp and Nakua in the next few hours.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I wanted to get your thoughts there because I felt like even if the Rams are at full strength, I would like the Cardinals in this spot.
Ooh. Okay. Well, if I'm taking a side, it would be the Cardinals. I'll tell you that. I just don't trust this Rams team. Again, I don't love what I saw last week. I still think Stafford, like the wild throws are still there, but I just don't think he's been nearly as consistent as he was, kind of earlier in his Rams career. Like they had a should have been touchdown play where he and Cooper Kupp kind of got turned around on a free play. I don't know how that one ended up falling in the end zone. He missed, a wide open receiver. I believe it was Henderson, running up the sideline of what would have been maybe a touchdown, if nothing else, like a 50, 60-yard gain. Like something just still looks a little bit off to me with Stafford. And, even Kupp and Nakua, like when they've been healthy the last few weeks, I know Stafford's been in and out. He's been banged up, but, both of those guys have slowed down pretty immensely.
They have. We came into the year really expecting nothing from the Rams, and they showed some impressive offensive ability through the first month or so of the season, but it might have worn off at this point. And I think, the Cardinals are going in another direction where I think they will be competitive and frisky the rest of the season.
Okay. Real quickly, John, I want to hit two more games. We can just do like 30 seconds on these. Any interest in taking the Eagles 3.5 at home against the Bills, or either side of this Chiefs Raiders game, which is fascinating to discuss?
For the Eagles game, I'm concerned about the Bills offense turning around. And I think, the Eagles basically lucked out that the Chiefs have terrible pass catchers, on Monday night. Travis Kelce notwithstanding, although he had a bad game in his own right, but I do worry that the likes of Diggs and Shakir and Dalton Kincaid can do some damage against this Philly secondary. But I think by the same token, Philly can force turnovers, get Josh Allen off of his spot. So I like the Eagles more than I feel comfortable, because the Bills did look better this past weekend. But I think my longstanding take on the Bills still stands. I know it was a war that the Eagles were in on Monday night, so trusting them to cover more than 3 in this spot against a good Bills team is tough. But I do side with the Eagles here, and then the Chiefs. I think this is one of those things where they're going to be annoyed at the press coverage from this week. I think Monday night was probably pretty tough for them. Like, boohoo, it's like the hardest night that they've had for like the public to kind of point and laugh at the Chiefs in 5 or 6 years. So they're going to kill the Raiders. I think that there's very little question about that. I would feel comfortable including that on the card. Do I think that they still have problems that even a blowout win will exist after that? Yes. Like I think that there are legitimate questions about their title viability this year, but does that mean much for week 12 against the Raiders? I don't think so. The Raiders plucky against the Dolphins last week on the road, but no, the Chiefs coming in angry. I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that one.
I think what we forget with the Chiefs is that this has become like a borderline dominant defense, right? So, we can worry about the offense, and I have my concerns as well, and I don't think they're going to fix that, over the course of a week. But I also don't like Aiden O'Connell going up against that defense that was all over Jalen Hurts and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last week. And we could say Philly was a little bit lucky to come away with a win, and I agree with that. But I also don't think Philly played very well. I think they would say that they played probably a B- C+ game on offense. I think they have an easier matchup now, defense wise at home against Buffalo. I mean, going to Arrowhead, no matter what, is tough. Going against that defense, like I think that game could turn into a shootout. Like the total's up at 48.5. And if that's the case, that means neither defense is playing all that well. But I want to see Buffalo keep up with Philly, because I think the Eagles are going to be able to go up and down the field on that Bills defense.
I do too. Basically the entirety of the Bills cornerback personnel is on the injury report, and that's not even talking about Trey White and Kaiir Elam. Like the guys that they've been relying on over the last month and a half, they're all dinged up right now. So that plus AJ Brown coming off a game where he kind of got shut out.
Mhm.
Oh, that could be tough for them. So yeah, I like the favorites here. I like the Eagles
Mhm.
by 3.5, and I do like the Chiefs to get it done this week. And it could be partially because of the defense. Maybe forcing some turnovers that turn into points. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable including both those teams on the card.
All right, we want to take a moment to thank the presenting sponsor of this video, Circa, of course. We're in the Circa Million contest after all, and it's football season at Circa Resort and Casino out in Las Vegas. They got the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium Swim is the best place to watch football, and in fact, John, it's America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game from college to the pros. I mean, this would be an all-time weekend to be at Circa with all the college basketball
Oh,
going
man.
on. We got Michigan, Ohio State on Saturday. We got some big Badger basketball this weekend as well. You can catch all the action poolside. They got a bunch of seating options, day beds, private temperature-controlled cabanas that all have their own TVs. Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino, and it's open 365 days a year, all sports, all seasons. Book today at circalasvegas.com. That's circalasvegas.com. All right, John. We got some thinking to do. I think we presented ourselves with some good options here. I like the 49ers on Thursday. We'll have to discuss whether or not we want to use either Detroit or Dallas. I don't want to touch the underdogs on Thanksgiving. And I'll have to kind of reckon with myself mentally if I'm ready to pick against the Jags in what feels like their kind of game of the year. And I think, crazy enough, like I think both these teams are going to make the playoffs, by the way, Jacksonville and Houston. But you still want to be the one with home field.
Right. No, you absolutely do. The division in their grasp, it'd be tough for the Jaguars having kind of had a firm grasp on that all year. And, the Houston just really turning it on and kind of being one of these stories of the NFL. Again, I'm with you, especially also with Buffalo struggling the way that it has. And, the Bengals kind of recusing themselves from playoff contention as well. Things are open. Like the 6 and 7 spots are open in the AFC. So I'm very much looking forward to this stretch run. And, this Sunday, that particular game, Jags Houston, huge.
Yeah, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. Super fun slate coming at us. We thank everybody for joining us. We will follow up next week and let you know how our Circa Million picks for week 12 of the NFL season go. Best of luck. If you're gambling on the NFL, if you're playing in the Circa contest this weekend, I guess we could wish you good luck, right? We're technically competing against you, but we want everybody to win as much as possible. So we will follow up next week.
Everyone can eat.
Yes. We'll let you know how it goes next week. We thank everybody for watching along, and make sure you go check out circalasvegas.com. Again, that was circalasvegas.com. Book your stay to stay at Circa and check out Stadium Swim.